He pulled her back from death and into something far worse. The colony had been quiet for only a moment before the world fell apart. Buildings crumbled like sandcastles against the wind. Fires raced across the streets, hungry for everything in their path. Civilians ran blindly, their faces twisted with fear and shock. Lyra Kane moved among them, her medical pack bouncing against her back, her hands steady, even as the chaos screamed around her. She had seen destruction before, but nothing like this. A beam from a half-collapsed structure wavered above a trapped child. Lyra didn't hesitate. She dropped her pack, dashed forward, and lifted the beam with all her strength. The child's eyes were wide and terrified, but she kept her focus. Just as she lifted the weight enough for the child to crawl free, the structure groaned and shifted. Before she could react, a second larger beam fell, striking her chest. She gasped, pain tearing through her body. And then everything went black. Dr. Elias Vance arrived moments later, drawn by the emergency signal. He had seen many deaths, but the sight of Lyra lying motionless on the rubble made something inside him tighten. His hands shook slightly as he bent down beside her. Her chest didn't rise. No pulse. Nothing. The protocols were clear. They were not supposed to interfere with death outside controlled environments. But Elias had never followed protocols when a life was at stake, especially one like hers. He carried her to his lab, hidden beneath the colony's research tower. The lab was small, cluttered with experimental equipment and humming with machines that looked like they belonged in a dream rather than reality. Elias worked fast, connecting her to a network of devices that pulsed with soft light. "I'm not supposed to do this," he muttered to himself, his fingers flying over the controls. "But I can't let her die. Not like this." Lyra's body was cold, her breathing absent. The machines beeped warnings, flashing red at him, but Elias ignored them. He activated the experimental device machine that had never been used on a living human, and certainly not on someone who had died so suddenly. The machine hummed, lights flashing in a strange rhythm. It drew energy from the lab's power core and projected it into Lyra's body in precise pulses. Minutes passed. Elias held his breath, watching for any sign of life. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, her chest twitched. A shallow breath escaped her lips. Elias leaned closer, heart pounding. Come on," he whispered, as if the words themselves could will her back. Her eyes fluttered open. At first, they were unfocused, seeing only shadows. Then they sharpened. She gasped, a sound of both relief and confusion. Where am I?" she asked weakly. "You're safe," Elias said, lifting her carefully. "I've got you. You're okay now." Lyra blinked rapidly, trying to remember. The memory of the beam falling hit her like a hammer. She gasped again, clutching her chest, and then noticed the lab around her. What happened? The building. The child. "You saved the child," Elias said. "You did everything right. You just needed a little help finishing the job." Lyra's gaze drifted, and for a moment Elias thought she was asleep. Then she whispered something that made him freeze. "They're waiting. Don't let them in." "What are you talking about?" Elias asked, concern tightening his chest. She shook her head, trembling. I don't know. I saw something, and it's coming." Her voice trailed off. Her eyes flickered strangely, a faint glimmer that didn't belong to a living human. Elias frowned. He had noticed the anomaly the moment she woke. Something in her body, her very essence, was different. The machine had worked, but not perfectly. It had revived her, but it had also opened a door, a small fracture between her and something else. Something not of this world. "Try to rest," he said gently. "You need to recover. You'll be safe here." Lyra nodded slowly, but her hands twitched nervously. She sat on the lab bed, her eyes darting to corners and shadows as if expecting them to move. Elias felt a chill he couldn't explain. Over the next few hours, he ran tests. Her vital signs were stable, even strong. But the readings on one device, the one measuring energy fields, spiked unpredictably. Lyra seemed unaware of it, but Elias could feel it in the room, a subtle pressure that made his skin crawl. "What is happening to me?" she asked finally, voice small. I feel wrong. Sometimes I feel like I'm not entirely me. You're alive, he said carefully. That's what matters. But he didn't tell her the truth. That she was alive was only half the story. The other half was a presence that had attached itself to her when she died. Something alien and dangerous. Days passed, and Lyra tried to adjust to life again, but nothing felt normal. Shadows lingered in corners where light should have gone. Machines buzzed erratically around her. Sometimes she would speak in her sleep, murmuring words in a language Elias did not recognize. Elias watched her carefully, torn between relief and fear. He had saved her life, but at what cost? Every night he monitored her sleep, studying her brainwaves, her energy readings. The anomaly was growing stronger. Elias, Lyra said one evening, her voice shaking. I dreamt of them again. The shadows. They're calling me. Put a hand on hers. They're not real. You're safe. I won't let anything happen to you. I'm not the same, she said quietly, tears brimming. I can feel it. Something. Inside me. It's not gone. It's waiting. Leah swallowed hard. He had anticipated risks, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. The machine had saved her life, yes. But it had also tethered her to something extra-dimensional, something alive and intelligent. Something that hungered for entry into their world. He made a decision. He would find a way to understand it before it grew too strong. He would protect her. Humanity had faced extinction before, and time and again, humans had fought the odds with nothing but courage and ingenuity. Elias believed this time could be no different. Lyra, despite her fear, refused to hide. She returned to the streets of the colony, helping where she could. People marveled at her recovery, unaware of the strange energy that clung to her. She patched wounds, carried supplies, and comforted the frightened. All while Elias trailed behind, scanning for anomalies, ready to intervene if the alien presence made its move. One evening, as they walked through a devastated sector, Lyra stopped. She knelt beside a young girl trapped under debris, pulling her free with careful hands. The girl's mother ran to them, tears of relief streaking her soot-stained face. You saved her, the mother cried. I don't know how to thank you. Lyra smiled faintly, but her eyes flickered for a brief moment, and a shadow behind a broken wall moved, almost like it was watching her. Elias noticed it instantly and pulled her back. Go inside, he said urgently. Now, the shadow vanished as quickly as it appeared. Lyra looked at him, confused. You're not imagining things, Elias said quietly. Something is attached to you, and I need to understand it before it becomes something worse. Lyra swallowed hard, her stomach twisting with dread. I thought I was lucky to be alive, but this feels worse than death. Elias nodded grimly. Sometimes surviving is only the beginning of the fight. That night, as Lyra slept under the watchful eye of Elias, the machines hummed softly. Outside, the colony slept uneasily, unaware that one of their own had become a bridge between worlds, something extraordinary and terrifying. The energy reading spiked again, but this time, Elias did not look away. He was ready. He had to be. Humanity had faced monsters before, and he believed, somehow, they could face this too. But even as he watched, a faint whisper brushed the edges of his mind, the words barely audible. We are waiting. Elias clenched his jaw. He would not allow it. Humanity would not lose one of its own. Not now. Not ever. The fight had begun. The morning light came weakly through the dust-filled windows of the colony. The streets were quiet now, though the scars of destruction remained. Lyra Kane sat on the edge of her cot in the small lab, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Sleep had been restless. Her dreams were filled with shifting shadows, whispering voices, and a cold presence she could not shake. Even now, awake, she felt it lurking just beyond her vision. Waiting. Elias Vance stood nearby, his fingers tracing lines across the holographic displays that filled the lab. Energy readings fluctuated erratically, spikes and drops that no normal human could generate. His brow was furrowed and the lines around his eyes were deeper than usual. This presence in Lyra, whatever it was growing stronger. and he did not yet understand it. "You need to eat," Elias said gently. "You can't fight this if you're weak." "I'm not hungry," Lyra replied. Her voice was quiet, almost hollow. "I feel wrong. Sometimes I feel like I'm being watched. Like something is inside me and it isn't me." Leah studied her closely. She was alive, yes, but alive in a way that no human had ever been before. Something about her pulse, her energy field, and the faint, flickering glow in her eyes suggested that she was more than human, now something he could not explain. "You're safe here," he said firmly. "I'll make sure nothing reaches you." Lyra shook her head. "I don't feel safe anywhere. Even here in this lab. It's watching." Elias looked away, frustrated. He wanted to believe that his machines and knowledge were enough, but deep down, he knew he had only delayed the inevitable. Whatever had attached itself to Lyra when she died was intelligent. It was patient. And it was hungry. They worked together in silence for a while. Elias ran diagnostic scans, monitored her energy levels, and recorded anomalies in the lab's systems. Lyra observed him, her hands trembling occasionally as if she feared the results of the tests. "You're trying to fix me," she said finally. "But maybe I can't be fixed." Elias shook his head. "You're human. That means you're stronger than anything we've faced before. You've survived when death took everyone else. You can survive this too." Lyra's lips pressed together, but she did not argue. She wanted to believe him. Humans had always survived against impossible odds, and perhaps, she thought, that resilience was still inside her. That afternoon, Elias led her outside the lab under strict safety protocols. The streets of the colony were littered with rubble, broken machinery, and the occasional abandoned personal effects. The smell of smoke and scorched metal hung heavy in the air. "Stay close," Elias warned. "We need to observe the environment. The presence. It reacts to movement and energy." Lyra followed, keeping her eyes open for anything unusual. Every shadow made her flinch. Every flicker of light seemed like a signal, but no sign of the entity appeared in the open. As they walked, a small group of children emerged from the rubble. One of them, a boy with dirt-smudged cheeks, stumbled and fell. Lyra ran forward instinctively, helping him to his feet. The child looked at her with wide, trusting eyes. "You saved me before," he whispered. Lyra smiled faintly. "I'm trying to keep helping. That's all we can do, right?" Elias watched her, pride and fear battling in his chest. Human courage shone through her, even when everything about her existence had changed. She was a survivor, and she had the heart of a protector. But as they continued through the streets, Elias noticed subtle anomalies. Machines would spark and die around Lyra, small lights flickering in a pattern that mimicked a heartbeat. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally. The temperature in certain areas dropped inexplicably. "That's it," Elias muttered. "It's responding to her. Whatever it is, it's tethered to her." Lyra frowned. "Tethered? What do you mean?" "I mean that it's attached," he said carefully. "When you died, something found a way to latch onto you. It's not fully here yet, but it's growing stronger. I need to understand it before it can manifest completely." Her stomach tightened. "And if you can't?" Elias swallowed. "Then we fight it. Humans always find a way to fight." They returned to the lab, but the feeling of being watched did not leave her. That night, as Lyra lay in the cot, she could feel the presence stirring. Shadows in the corners stretched unnaturally, reaching toward her. She held her breath, willing herself to stay calm. Elias watched her carefully. "You're not imagining it," he said softly. "It's there, but it won't hurt you while I'm here." "I don't want to be here anymore," Lyra whispered. "I thought surviving would feel like a gift, but it feels like a curse." Leah kneeled beside her. "You survived because you are human, because humans are strong. But strength isn't just about muscles or energy. It's about heart, determination, and courage. That's why I saved you. That's why you're still here." Lyra looked at him, searching for comfort in his steady gaze. "And if I lose that, then I'll help you find it again," Elias said firmly. The next day, Elias decided they needed more information. He tapped into the colony's archived records, searching for any history of anomalies like this. There were hints, scattered reports of strange energy readings and unexplained phenomena, near-death events. But nothing conclusive. "This isn't just an experiment gone wrong," he said. "It's something entirely new, something human survival hasn't faced before." Lyra shivered. "And what if it's bigger than us?" "Then we'll adapt," he said, his voice calm but resolute. Humans always do. As they continued their research, Lyra began to notice changes in herself. She could sense movements before they happened, feel energy fluctuations, and occasionally glimpsed figures at the edge of her vision. She tried not to panic, but the presence was becoming bolder one afternoon. While Elias recalibrated a sensor, Lyra's eyes flickered with that strange glow. The sensor emitted a high-pitched tone and shut down. Elias looked up, alarmed. "It's reacting," he said. "The present Sit knows we're studying it." Lyra swallowed, feeling fear curl in her stomach. "Does that mean it's intelligent?" "Yes," Elias said grimly. "It's aware of us, and it's patient. Whatever it is, it will wait for the right moment." The following nights were restless. Lyra's dreams grew darker, filled with shifting landscapes of shadows and whispers. She could feel the entity moving closer, testing her defenses, probing the limits of her mind. She woke drenched in sweat, her heart racing. Elias stayed by her side, monitoring every reaction, every spike in energy. He worked tirelessly, devising strategies to isolate and contain the presence. He modified sensors, ran experiments, and created containment fields. "Lyra," said one evening, as they pored over readings, "we're not just observing. We're learning, and knowledge is power. Humans survive by understanding, by adapting, by never giving up." "That's what we'll do," Lyra nodded, her hands gripping his lightly. Despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, she felt a spark of hope. Humans had faced extinction before. They had battled impossible odds and won. Perhaps with Elias, she could survive this too. But the presence was clever. One night, while Elias slept, Lyra sat by the window, staring at the stars. The shadows moved again, slowly, deliberately, forming shapes that mimicked human gestures. She felt a cold whisper in her mind. "We are waiting." Lyra clenched her fists, fear and determination warring inside her. "You will not take me," she whispered. "I am human. I survive." In the lab, the machines hummed steadily, monitoring, calculating, recording. Elias awoke, sensing her defiance, and a small, proud smile touched his lips. Humans were fragile, yes, but they were also resilient. They never gave up. Even when faced with the unknown, the presence would test her. It would push her limits. But humanity had survived worse before, and with courage, ingenuity, and determination, perhaps they could survive this as well. Lyra's eyes glimmered in the dim light, a reflection of the strange energy that now coursed through her. She was alive, stronger than before, in ways she did not yet understand. And despite the fear, she felt a stubborn fire burn inside her. The fight was only beginning. The colony had become quieter than usual. But that calm was only on the surface. Buildings still smoldered, the streets were cracked and uneven, and the few civilians who remained moved cautiously, glancing at the sky as if it might fall. Lyra Kane walked with Elias Vance through the wreckage, her steps slow but deliberate. Each footfall reminded her of the fragility of human life and the strange energy now tethered to her. Something she could neither see nor fully understand. Elias carried a portable device that hummed softly, lights flickering as it scanned the area. He had spent hours tweaking it, hoping it would detect the presence more clearly. So far, the readings were inconsistent. The entity was clever, patient, and it seemed to anticipate their movements. "Stay close," Elias whispered. "It reacts to you. If you move too far ahead, it might sense the opportunity to reach out." Lyra nodded, her hands tight on her pack. "I know. I can feel it. Watching, waiting." They moved toward a sector that had been partially destroyed by an earlier explosion. Some of the buildings had collapsed entirely, leaving jagged skeletons of metal and concrete. It was there, Elias hoped, that they could find anomalies in energy readings, something that would tell them how the presence interacted with the real world. As they entered the ruins, a sudden chill swept over the street. The portable device beeped urgently. Elias glanced at the readings. Energy spikes were higher than ever, concentrated in a nearby building. He gestured for Lyra to stay back. Inside, he murmured, "That's where it is strongest." The building's entrance was partially blocked by debris. Elias cleared a path, his movements careful. Lyra followed, eyes scanning the shadows. Every corner, every doorway seemed alive with movement that should not exist. She could feel the presence brushing against her mind, a whisper that teased her thoughts, a sensation that made her skin prickle. Inside, the building was dark, the air thick with dust and heat. A faint glow emanated from the walls, flickering in rhythm with Lyra's heartbeat. She stepped closer, her hand brushing the surface, and felt a pulse of energy surge through her. Her vision swam, and for a moment she saw shapes, figures that moved with an intelligence that was unnerving. "Do you see it?" Elias asked, his voice low. Lyra nodded, unable to speak. The shapes twisted and shifted, almost like shadows, but they had purpose. They followed her movements, waiting for a chance to manifest. Elias activated the portable device, projecting a field of light that illuminated the area. The shadows recoiled, hissing softly as if repelled. But then they merged and surged toward the center of the room, forming a figure that was human-like, yet not human at all. Its features were vague, as though carved from smoke, but its eyes glowed with the same strange light that sometimes flickered in Lyra's own. "It's tethered to you," Elias said, "and it knows you can see it. That makes you dangerous to it." Lyra's throat tightened. "Dangerous? How?" "Because you survived," he said. "Because humans survive. That's what it doesn't understand. It's used to fear controlling life, controlling death. You resist, and that makes you a threat." The shadow figure advanced. The air grew colder, and the lights in the lab flickered even from outside the building. Lyra felt a pull, as if the presence wanted to step into her body, to merge, to consume. Her heart raced, but she clenched her fists. "I won't let you," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "I'm human. I survive." The figure paused, tilting its head, as if it recognized her defiance. Then it lunged, a wave of shadow sweeping toward her. Elias activated the device fully, and a burst of energy formed a protective barrier around Lyra. The figure shrieked, a sound that pierced the silence of the ruins, and recoiled. "You can't fight it alone," Elias shouted. "You need me." Lyra nodded, stepping back into his protective field. Together, they pushed forward, the portable device acting as a shield, illuminating the shadow and keeping it at bay. They discovered a small room in the building, partially intact. With walls covered in strange markings that seemed older than the colony itself, "These markings," Elias muttered, "they're not human. They're similar to the energy signature we've been seeing. Whoever or whatever made them understood this presence." Lyra traced her fingers over the wall, her touch sending ripples through the energy field. She shivered as images flashed in her mind, figures moving through darkness. Worlds folded into themselves, a shadow stretching endlessly. It was terrifying, but she could also feel a connection, a way to communicate, even if only partially. "You feel it too," Elias said, reading her expression. "Yes," she whispered. "But it's not just fear. It's waiting, watching, and it wants something from me." "Good," Elias said grimly. "That means it can be influenced. It reacts to human intent. That's our advantage." Over the next few days, Elias and Lyra tested the limits of her connection. She learned to sense the presence before it acted, to anticipate its movements, and even to repel minor manifestations using her own energy, guided by Elias's devices. The bond was dangerous, unpredictable, but it was also the key to survival. One night, while they were examining data in the lab, a sudden tremor shook the floor. Lights flickered, machines beeped, and Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. She could feel the presence surging closer, stronger than ever. "It's testing me," she said, her voice tight with concentration. "Trying to see what I can do." "You have to focus," Elias said. "Remember, humans survive because we adapt. That's what you're doing." Lyra closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The shadow presence writhed in her mind, probing, pushing, trying to break her concentration. She clenched her teeth and focused on what made her human: courage, determination, compassion. The presence shrieked and recoiled, a wave of cold energy pulsing through the room. Elia steadied the device, amplifying her strength. Slowly, the presence shrank back, no longer able to dominate her mind. Lyra opened her eyes, exhausted but resolute. "You did it," Elias said, relief evident in his voice. "You're stronger than it thought." Lyra nodded, though doubt lingered. The presence would return, stronger and smarter, testing her limits again. But for now, they had a small victory. Humanity had survived another trial, and their ingenuity, combined with courage, had won the moment. The next day, they decided to investigate the colony archives further. Ancient records, long forgotten, hinted at similar energy phenomena in distant worlds. There were reports of humans encountering inexplicable shadows, surviving against forces that should have been unstoppable. The patterns were subtle, but one thing became clear: human resilience had always been underestimated. And somehow, people had survived. Lyra studied the records, fascinated. Humans always survive no matter what. She asked. "Yes," Elias said, nodding. "Because humans don't just fight with strength. We fight with our minds, our hearts, our ingenuity. That's why I believe we can face this and win." As they pieced together the history, the shadow presence grew bolder. One night it manifested fully near the lab, a looming figure with glowing eyes that mirrored Lyra's own. Elias activated all containment devices, but the figure spoke through her mind. "Your strength is mine to consume." Lyra trembled, but stood firm. "No," she said aloud. "I am human. I survive." The figure recoiled again, confused by her defiance. Elias monitored the energy spikes, noting patterns. "It reacts to resolve," he said. "The stronger your determination, the weaker it becomes. That's our advantage. That's how humans survive. We are resilient. We don't give up." Lyra drew in a deep breath, focusing on the truth in his words. She could feel the presence shrinking, pushed back by her will and the devices around her. For the first time, she felt hope. They could fight this. They could survive. Humanity had faced extinction, darkness, and impossible odds before and had triumphed. In the dim light of the lab, Lyra and Elias worked late into the night, planning, analyzing, preparing for the next encounter. The presence was growing, yes, but so was their understanding. And in that understanding lay power, human ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Outside, the colony slept uneasily. No one noticed the strange lights flickering in the lab or the shadowy figures that moved at the edge of vision. But inside, two humans were preparing to face the unknown, confident in what they had always been: survivors. And somewhere, beyond the visible world, the presence waited, aware of the humans who defied it. But for now, it had learned something new. Humans were not easy to control. Humans were dangerous. Humans survived. Lyra stood by the window, watching the stars. "I feel it," she whispered. "It's still there, but I can fight it." "We can fight it," Elias nodded beside her. "That's the spirit. Humans always survive, and together, we're unstoppable." The night was quiet, but the battle had only just begun. The colony had grown quieter, but the calm was deceiving. Lyra Kane moved through the streets with Elias Vance at her side, both of them tense and alert. The shadow presence had become more aggressive, more intelligent, testing the limits of Lyra's will. Every flicker of light, every unusual sound, made her pulse quicken. She could feel the entity tugging at her mind, probing, learning. Waiting for a weakness to exploit, Elias scanned the ruins with the portable device. reading the spikes of energy that indicated the presence's movements. "It's adapting," he said quietly. "Every time we contain it, it changes, learns. That's why we need a new strategy." Lyra's eyes were narrow with concentration. "It's stronger. It doesn't want to be stopped. And I don't know if I can fight it forever." "You can," Elias said firmly. "Humans survive because we adapt. Courage, determination, ingenuity, that's what makes us dangerous. You have all three, Lyra. That's why it hasn't taken you yet." They reached a partially collapsed building, its walls cracked and blackened. The portable device beeped urgently as they approached. The readings were off the charts, indicating a concentration of the presence's energy. "This is it," Elias said. "We find out what it wants and how it operates here." Lyra's stomach twisted, a mix of fear and resolve. "And if it attacks?" "Then we defend," Elias said. "Together." Inside, the building was dark and silent, except for the hum of the device. Shadows flickered along the walls, moving unnaturally. Lyra could feel them brushing against her mind, whispering words she didn't understand. Words that made her chest tighten suddenly. The shadows coalesced into a larger figure, taller and more defined than before. Its eyes glowed with the same eerie light that sometimes flickered in Lyra's own. The figure moved deliberately, circling her like a predator assessing prey. Elias activated the device fully, projecting a barrier of light around them. The figure hissed, retreating slightly, but it did not vanish. "It's testing you," Elias said. "It wants to see how much control you have over your own mind." Lyra clenched her fists, closing her eyes. She focused on what made her human, her heart, her courage, her desire to protect others. The presence shrieked inside her mind, a sound like breaking glass, but she held firm. Slowly, the shadow began to shrink, retreating under her determination and the device's power. "You're doing it," Elias said. "You're stronger than it thinks." But Lyra felt the strain. Every second of resistance drained her, making her pulse heavy and her vision blur. "I can't hold it forever," she admitted, her voice shaking. Elias's expression hardened. "Then we finish this together. I have an idea, but it's risky." He led her to a back room where the walls were covered in ancient symbols, similar to those they had found before. Elias had studied them, trying to understand their meaning. "These symbols," he explained, "are a form of containment. They can channel and weaken the presence. But to work fully, we'll need to amplify the energy using both your life force and the device." Lyra's eyes widened. "My life force? That sounds dangerous." "It is," Elias admitted. "But it's the only way to push it back permanently. You won't die, not if we control the energy carefully. But it will strain you mentally, physically. Everything." She swallowed hard, fear and determination warring inside her. "If this is the only way, then we do it. We survive. That's what humans do," Elias nodded, admiration in his eyes. "Exactly. Humans survive, even when the odds are impossible. And you're proving that right now." They set up the device, connecting it to the symbols and creating a field that pulsed with energy. Lyra took a deep breath, placing her hands on the central node. She felt the presence stir, tugging at her, trying to resist. The room grew cold, shadows twisting and reaching for her. But she focused on her humanity, on courage and will. Elias monitored the readings, adjusting the device to stabilize the energy flow. The presence screamed in her mind, a sound of rage and confusion. "It doesn't understand." Lyra shouted, "I am human. I survive." Energy surged, filling the room with light and sound. The shadows writhed, forming shapes that twisted and collided with the energy barrier. Lyra's body trembled, sweat pouring down her face, but she kept her mind sharp, her resolve unwavering. Suddenly, the presence lunged with everything it had, a concentrated wave of dark energy aimed at breaking her will. Lyra felt herself being pulled, tugged toward the entity. She gasped, feeling the pressure on her chest and mind. But she clung to her humanity, focusing on every memory of courage. Every act of selflessness she had performed, Elias shouted over the roar of energy, adjusting the device. "Hold on. You're stronger than it. Use everything you are." Lyra's vision blurred, but she focused harder, thinking of the civilians she had saved, the children she had protected, the countless acts of human courage that defined her. She felt the presence waver, confused by her determination. With a final, strained effort, she pushed back, channeling all her focus and willpower into the energy field. The shadows screamed, twisting and writhing before collapsing into nothingness. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight of the presence gone, at least for now. Lyra collapsed onto the floor, exhausted. Elias rushed to her side, checking her vital signs. "You did it," he said, relief flooding his voice. "You're safe." "You're still you," she gasped for air, feeling the strain in every muscle. But a small smile appeared on her face. "We survived," Elias nodded. "Yes, humans survive. That's what makes us unstoppable." Over the next few days, Lyra recovered slowly. The strain had left her weak, but her resolve was stronger than ever. She and Elias began to plan for the future, knowing the presence might return. They studied the ancient symbols, refining the containment methods, learning how to use her connection to the entity as an advantage rather than a weakness. One afternoon, as they worked in the lab, a new spike of energy appeared on the device. Lyra's eyes flickered with the familiar glow, and she felt the presence stirring. But this time, she didn't panic. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in humanity. "It's testing us again," Elias said. "But we know it now. We can fight it better," Lyra nodded. "And if it comes back stronger, we'll adapt again. Humans always do." That night, she sat by the window, staring at the stars. She felt a quiet confidence, a growing understanding of her own power and the role she played in facing the unknown. The presence was still out there, waiting, but she was no longer afraid. She had survived death once, faced an alien force, and come out stronger. Humanity's resilience flowed through her veins, unbroken. Elias joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We faced impossible odds and survived. That's what humans do. We endure, we adapt, we fight, and we win." Lyra smiled faintly. "I understand now. Even if it comes back, we'll face it together." The night was still, but the lab was alive with the hum of energy, the flicker of devices, and the quiet determination of two humans who had faced darkness and refused to surrender. Outside, the colony slept, unaware of the battle being fought, not with weapons, but with courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding human spirit. And somewhere, the presence lingered, patient and intelligent, waiting for the next moment to test them again. But it had learned something new. Humans were not easy to dominate. Humans were dangerous. Humans survived. Lyra turned her gaze back to the stars. She felt the presence, yes, but she also felt something stronger. Her own determination, her own humanity, and the unbreakable bond she shared with Elias. Whatever came next, she knew they could face it. Humanity had survived worse than this before. They always would. The fight was far from over. But for the first time, Lyra felt the unshakable truth of what Elias had always believed. Humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans survive. And that was enough. The colony was quieter than ever, but a restless tension lingered in the air. Lyra Kane stood at the edge of the lab, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The skies were bruised with smoke and dust from past destruction, but beyond them, the stars shone bright and endless, a reminder of the world's humanity had yet to explore. Elias Vance joined her silently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's stronger now," he said. "The presence has learned from our last encounter. It will test us harder than ever." Lyra's gaze didn't leave the horizon. "I'm ready," she said. "I survived death once, faced it again, and came out stronger. We can face it now. Together." Elias nodded, pride and caution mixing in his expression. Humans survived because they refused to surrender, and Lyra was a perfect example. But he knew the coming confrontation would be the hardest trial yet. The presence had grown bold, hungry, and intelligent. It would strike with all its power. Inside the lab, Elias activated the containment field, now fully upgraded with ancient symbols and human technology. Energy pulses ran through every circuit, converging at the central node where Lyra would connect. She took her position carefully, placing her hands on the device. Her pulse raced, but her mind was sharp. Focused on the one truth she had learned: humanity survives by courage, by ingenuity, and by refusing to give up. The lights flickered, and the shadows coalesced into the presence's true form. It was massive, shifting constantly, its humanoid shape made of writhing darkness. Its eyes, the same eerie glow as Lyra's, fixed on her with intelligence and malice. It reached toward her, a wave of energy that pulsed through the room, trying to break her will. "You can't hold it alone this time," Elias shouted. "We do it together. Focus on your humanity and everything that makes you human." Lyra gritted her teeth, every muscle trembling. She felt the presence pushing against her, tugging at her mind, trying to pull her into its shadow. But she pushed back, summoning every memory of courage and every act of selflessness she had performed. The lives she had saved, the children she had protected, the colony she had defended, all of it gave her strength. "I am human," she shouted, voice ringing through the lab. "I survive. I will not be consumed." The presence recoiled slightly, hissing in frustration. Elias adjusted the device, amplifying Lyra's energy and linking it to the containment field. Light surged through the room, illuminating the shadows and forcing them to shrink. The presence screamed, a sound that rattled the walls and shook the very air. "You're doing it," Elias yelled. "Keep pushing. Use everything you are." Lyra felt exhaustion creeping into her bones, every fiber of her being screaming in protest. But she forced herself to remain calm, steadying her breath and focusing on the truth. She was human, and humans endure against impossible odds. The presence's energy struck at her mind again, trying to overwhelm her, but she met it with willpower and determination. Slowly, methodically, the shadows began to fracture, breaking apart under the combined force of the containment field and Lyra's resolve. The presence twisted, forming new shapes, testing every strategy it could muster. But it underestimated one thing: the ingenuity of humans and the strength that came from their spirit. Lyra raised her voice, chanting words she did not understand but felt instinctively, a connection to the symbols and the energy flowing through her. The presence shrieked again, and then a visible rift appeared in the shadows, the darkness pulling back as if retreating into itself. Elias monitored the readings. "It's working. The containment is holding," he shouted. "Keep it steady." The room trembled as the last wave of energy surged from the device into Lyra and through the containment field. The presence fought back fiercely, but the human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability had created something stronger than it had ever encountered. The shadows began to collapse, pulling into a tight vortex in the center of the room. Unable to resist the force of combined human determination and technology, Lyra felt the strain, her body trembling violently. But she held on, pouring every ounce of will into the containment. The presence let out a final, deafening scream, sound filled with rage and frustration, and then it vanished, sucked into the containment matrix. The room fell silent. Save for the hum of the machines and Lyra's heavy breathing, Elias rushed to her side, supporting her as she slumped to the floor. "You did it," he said softly, pride and relief evident. "You survived. You saved us all." Lyra nodded weakly, a smile breaking across her exhausted face. "We did it," she corrected, glancing at Elias. Humanity had survived again. Not because of a single individual, but because of courage, intelligence, and the unbreakable human spirit. The following days were quiet. The colony began to rebuild, the survivors cautiously returning to their routines. No one knew of the true battle that had been fought in the shadows, of the presence that had tested one human and through her courage, learned that humanity could not be easily defeated. Lyra and Elias worked to stabilize the containment field, ensuring the presence could never escape. The energy within her body had changed. She now carried a permanent connection to the extra-dimensional realm, but she was alive, stronger, and wiser. The human spirit had adapted and overcome, proving its resilience once again. One evening, Lyra sat by the edge of the colony, looking at the stars. The memory of death and the presence's threat lingered, but she no longer feared it. She could feel the strength of humanity within her, the courage that had allowed her to endure, to fight, and to survive. Elias joined her, carrying a small tray with water and rations. "You should eat," he said. "You've earned it." Lyra took a sip of water, the cool liquid steady in her. "I never imagined surviving would feel like this," she said quietly. "Not just surviving death, but surviving something worse. It changed me. Changed you," Elias said. "But it also showed what humans are capable of. We endure. We adapt. We survive. And now, so do you, in ways no one else could ever understand." Lyra smiled faintly. "I think I understand now. Humans aren't just about strength or skill. It's our spirit, our courage, our determination. That's what makes us unstoppable." Elias nodded. "Exactly. And that spirit isn't just in you. It's in every human who faces the impossible and refuses to give up." The night was calm, and the colony seemed to breathe easier. For now, the threat was contained. But Lyra knew, somewhere deep in the shadows, that danger could always return. Yet she no longer feared it. She had survived death, faced a force far beyond understanding, and emerged stronger. Humanity's resilience had once again proven itself. Lyra stood, looking at the horizon where the first lights of rebuilding flickered. She felt a quiet determination. "If it ever comes back," she whispered, "I'll be ready. Humanity has survived worse, and I carry that strength now." Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And you won't be alone. Humans survive because we stand together. Courage, ingenuity, determination, that's what keeps us alive." The stars above twinkled, distant but constant. Lyra felt a bond with them, a reminder of how small and fragile humans could seem, yet how extraordinary they were. Even when faced with death and darkness, humanity endured. The containment matrix hummed quietly in the lab, the last remnants of the presence safely locked away. Lyra felt the energy still flowing within her, a reminder of what had been overcome. She was changed, yes, but alive. And alive was enough. The colony slowly began to thrive again. People returned to their homes, rebuilt what had been destroyed, and moved forward. Unaware of the true battle that had ensured their survival, Lyra and Elias watched over them, silent guardians. Proof of what humans could achieve when courage met ingenuity. And somewhere, beyond the limits of human sight, the remnants of the presence lingered. Aware of the defiance and strength it had encountered, it had learned a lesson it could not ignore. Humans were resilient, unpredictable, and dangerous to forces that sought to control them. Lyra smiled, feeling a quiet pride. She had faced death, faced the shadows, and survived. Humanity had survived once more, and in her heart, she knew it would survive again. The fight had ended, but the spirit of humanity remained, unbroken and unstoppable. And Lyra Kane, survivor, hero, and human, stood as proof of everything humans were capable of when they refused to surrender. The stars above shone endlessly, and the colony thrived beneath them. Humanity endured, and through courage, determination, and ingenuity, it always would.